War II. This is a big deal. The United States doesn't want them to sell this or give it back to the Chigoans, and the UK seems to be forging ahead with it anyway. It doesn't seem to matter. And now they're deporting people who they say don't belong there. And the irony is thick on that one because they're importing people who don't belong in England to England. That's just, I mean, it's very, very, yeah, the irony is thick. China is using fishing vessels for war, and that is nothing new, but I've got some new videos showing you how they do that, how it's coordinated, how they form lines. It's very difficult to breach those lines, and fishing vessel or war vessel, it takes up space, and it's a strategy, and they are rolling it out, and I'll show it to you. MAID can be done in funeral homes. Remember when I was talking about how I was going to use MAID as a side business, and I was going to have a death closet, and like I was making a joke about it, like, oh yeah, we do lots of things in this house. This is my studio. This is my death closet. And I was kind of tongue-in-cheek making fun of the fact that you can not hire a hitman legally, but you can pay the government to kill you through taxes. You could just say, oh, I'd really like to, off myself here. And the government says, say nothing more. Go to your local funeral home and they'll take care of everything. And no joke, they will. And so you could still have a kill closet if you wanted to. Just make sure it's designated as a funeral home and you're in the clear. Dexter season, what are we on now? 15? He becomes a funeral home director in Canada, and it just becomes like a boring procedural show. I wish it wasn't the reality we were living through, where they were ethnically cleansing people using their MAID program, claiming compassion when it's monstrous and horrific. But hey, I guess we don't get to choose the times we live in. BC's budget is a $13 billion deficit. That's the biggest budget in BC history. I think they used to have balanced budgets. They used to have laws against not balancing the budget. And then a new government came in and said, that law is stupid. And now we have a $13 billion deficit. Trump promising 20% of taxes to be refunded for U.S. taxes. And that's a lot of money. 20% of your taxes to be refunded if you paid all that. If you invest that money, man, you're going to make a better return than paying taxes on it. That's for sure. AI in government, how that could go badly. And yes, it could go very badly. Why are we wasting time in Mexico when we could be trading in the United States? And I think that they don't want a deal, and I've talked about that a lot. And so here's more proof that we're spending a lot of money to get people down to trade in Mexico while pointedly ignoring the United States. And I don't even think Mexico really wants to trade with us. Carney rejects Marco Rubio's fantastic speech in Munich on behalf of Europe. And I think that it's super interesting because I watched that speech and I had only seen snippets, and I knew it was a great speech just from the snippets. And now they're trying to take that down. They're trying to remove that achievement. It is an achievement from Rubio, and say, oh, well, those white Christian nationalists. And the white Christian nationalists dog whistle is meant to replace white supremacists. It's meant to be an attack. It's meant to be akin to Nazis. It's meant to be akin to racist. It's meant to be a barb. And somebody said it to me as if like, oh yeah, obviously Trump's a white Christian national. Obviously, because he's white and Christian. And I was like, okay, but just so long as we're clear here, Africa and South America are South America is both very Christian continents, right? And so like you've got the Spanish speaking world, very Christian. Are you seriously saying that being a white Christian nationalist is white supremacy? But, Black African Christianity's fine. South American Christianity, Spanish Christianity, no problems there, right? But that white Christian nationalism, how dare you? Didn't we almost have a black pope? Are you kidding? So I don't have a lot of patience for all of that. I think that it's ridiculous. And Mark Carney invokes the white Christian nationalism in French to attack Donald Trump, and he refuses to talk about it in English. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, Marco Rubio is saying the United States and Europe belong to a civilization that stretches over continents, crossed over 2 oceans, and persisted for thousands of years from Athens to Rome to America. Western civilization must embrace its noble legacy if it's to reverse its decline. And yeah, and again, I shared the link yesterday for Rubio's speech. It's fantastic. It's a big red heart from the United States to Europe saying, we want to work with you. We want to do that thing that we did. And the United States is being treated like an ex who the partner would really rather move on. And, it's kind of getting creepy here. You're showing up at my house with these Valentines, and I'd really rather you didn't, and that's not appropriate. It's not appropriate. Maybe it may be appropriate in a relationship situation, like interpersonal relationship, but for states like this, and what they're doing is it's an attack, and I don't think it's even a thinly veiled attack. And it seems like Trump, I don't know, doesn't care, and he's continuing to try and push the people who are attacking out and replace them with nationalist patriots. But I don't know how that's going to go. It seems like we don't have time for this crap. Here's Mark Carney, and I'm going to have to read this because it is in French, because he refuses to speak English. And there is an English one, and I'll share the English one with you. But the English guy who's dubbing, I don't like his voice, so it bothered me. It got on my nerves. So here I am. I'll do the voice. Okay, so this is Mark Carney. He was asked a question, and he pivots to he's asked a question about his Davos speech and the content of his Davos speech, and he pivots to Rubio's Munich speech and says, Christianity, Smishtianity. Canada doesn't have a core identity. We've got cold winters. And so here's Mark Carney. I'm reading what Mark Carney's saying. So he says, there's an important point, I believe, between the Davos speech, one aspect of my comments in Quebec, Mr. Rubio's speech a week ago in Munich. Sorry, he's kind of slow. They're speaking. Mr. Rubio spoke, and the American administration sometimes speaks of Christian nationalism. Okay. That's their right. It's their administration's right. That's not Canadian nationalism, says the European. Canadian nationalism is a civic nationalism, apparently. A nationalism that respects the diverse cultures. Oh, woke nationalism. Sometimes very diverse people of all faiths and all aspects of diversity. The great diversity of this beautiful country. Nope. This is a very fundamental point to Carney, I guess. So we have changes happening around the world. Nope. Forced changes. A more dangerous and divided world. Oh, there's his favorite line. But there is a struggle that sometimes begins with that kind of holy and faithful nationalism. Don't be Christian, you evil Christians, he says. And Canadian nationalism. The struggle between. And that's important. Yes, it's important to protect our country in matters of defense. But above all, it's important to protect our system, our rights. He's not protecting our rights. And our system of respecting all the people who live here. But they don't respect our basic laws. Hi, you've been a student for a few years and now it's time to go home. Well, we don't want to go home. Okay, but you made an agreement to go home at the end of the time that you said that you're going to be there. You should respect our laws. No, we're not going to go home, and we demand you respect our culture and our traditions. Okay, how about no? How about if you want your culture and your traditions, you go home, because that would make everybody happy. See you later. Like, have fun with your culture and traditions. I hear it's great, but not what we do here. Different than we do here. You go home and do your thing, and we'll stay here and do our thing, and maybe we'll have a curry sometime at your place. See you later. Or not, right? Like, Rebel News is reporting Mark Carney reacts to U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's speech at the Munich Security Conference. Mr. Rubio has spoken, and the American administration from time to time talks about Christian nationalism. It's not Canadian nationalism. Canadian nationalism is civic nationalism. No, I don't think so. I think that's made up in Carney's fantasies. Mark Nixon says, reject Christianity. The U.S. and Marco Rubio describe the West as nations built on the Christian faith. Mark Carney rejects this notion. Canada is not built in the Christian faith. We are a nation of all cultures built on cold winters. The crowd goes wild. He refuses to explain in English. This is worse than Justin Trudeau saying we have zero core identity. It's that our core identity is whatever the people who move here from around the world want it to be. We're anything you could want, right? We say who, we say when, we say how much. Nico says, today Mark Carney said that there's a battle starting. I was saying, I think I told the Pretty Woman story. I was saying, like, we should find movies that the kids should watch. And I was like, but not Pretty Woman. Not yet. You don't want to aspire to be Vivian. That's a bad idea, but it's a good movie. Okay. Today, Mark Carney said there's a battle starting between Christian nationalism and Canadian nationalism. He continued by saying it's important to protect our country, but it's more important to protect our system of rights and respect the people who live here. They're not respecting our rights, and they don't respect the people who live here. They're flooding the country with foreigners and telling the people who live here to shut up about it. Thanks. while bribing the First Nations with billions of dollars a year that doesn't get to them. Weird, right? Gets to some of them. Carney is implying that Christians are the problem, yet we're the most persecuted group in Canada. My Christian ancestry built this country, and without them, it wouldn't exist. Unfortunately, we've allowed foreigners who don't embrace our culture to dictate what this country has become, and now we're the problem? It's clear that Carney is coming after us. It's time to wake up, everybody. Yeah, yep. I agree there. Juno News says Prime Minister Carney pushes back on the notion that Canada was founded on Christian faith, offering a different perspective from U.S. officials who frame Western nations as rooted in Christianity. Instead, he describes Canada as a multicultural country. And Carney is out of touch with reality. This is the 3-minute one, and the dubbing I didn't like. So.
Okay, yes, yeah, okay. Okay,
the dubbing was fine, I guess, but it was hard telling who was talking. Like, he just did one monotonous voiceover, and I didn't find it compelling to listen to. Reverend Jordan Wells says Mark Carney shreds the idea of a Christian West, while the U.S. and Marco Rubio hail the West as built on Christian faith. Mark Carney fires back. Canada is not founded on Christianity. We're a mosaic of all cultures, forged in cold winters. Crowd erupts and cheers. Worse than Trudeau's no core identity. So there's a little bit of coordination between what's being said by people there too. CBC Watcher says tomorrow's first reading with a record 2 million temporary migrants set to lose their status in the coming months. A union-championed campaign is emerging to demand that all of them be allowed to stay permanently in Canada. You know, respecting our rules and stuff. Right. Except for those rules. Yeah. We'll respect all the other rules. Yeah, sure you will. This week, a new group, get this, calling itself the United Immigrant Workers Front. So you could just take immigrant workers out and it's like the United Front group. Weird. Isn't that the Chinese CCP funded group that is used to destabilize foreign countries? The United Front. So it's the United Immigration Workers Front. Good job, China. I barely saw you under the mustache and the glasses there. Whew. Good disguise. Are you James O'Keefe? In a Monday video posted to Instagram, group organizers cited the pending expiration of 2 million visas and expressed their belief that all should have their permits extended to be given a path to permanent residency. Well, that's not the deal we all made, and so we're not going to welch on the deal. What's the word? Here is Pierre Poilievre confirming that we are no longer a Christian nation. He says, wishing Muslims a holy month of Ramadan, a sacred time of fasting, prayer, reflection, charity, and community. Ramadan Mubarak. And then it's another one. He says, I wish Muslims a peaceful month of Ramadan, a sacred period dedicated to fasting, prayer, reflection, charity, and community. Ramadan Mubarak, he says again. And then he says, Happy Lunar New Year. These are the top 3 posts on his feed when I went to look this morning to see if he'd talked about Happy Ash Wednesday, Lent, or anything like that, right? Yesterday was Pancake Tuesday, wasn't it? And so Lent and Ramadan fall the same time this year, and our leadership, Mark Carney, Pierre Poilievre, all of the leadership are saying, you know what we've got to do? We've got to acknowledge the Muslim holiday. That's what we've got to do. That's the most important thing, because Canadians aren't paying attention. They don't care. And also Chinese New Year. We have to acknowledge that. Lent Schmidt, right? Who cares about that? He says, by not saying anything about it. Weird, right? Isn't it weird? The King Charles did the Ramadan posts, and then did Lent this morning at like noon or something to that effect. So is there a time for Lent? I don't know. Happy Lunar New Year to all the families and communities celebrating across Canada. Wishing you a prosperous and healthy year of the fire horse, filled with new opportunities, success, and happiness. Fire horse? I thought isn't it just the year of the horse? So it's strange that our politicians are doing this, right? And I think that it is meant to destabilize. Oh, here's his Ash Wednesday one, 7 minutes ago. So 9:30 in the morning, Ash Wednesday. He says, today, millions of Christians observe Ash Wednesday, the beginning of Lent. May this Lenten journey over the next 40 days be filled with prayer, fasting, and almsgiving that will draw hearts closer to Christ. So it's funny, when you stand for everything, you stand for nothing, right? And so too little, too late. Juno News says the name Muhammad topped the list of the most popular baby names for boys in Alberta last year when all its spelling variations were counted. Is the spelling variation trick used to hide their numbers? I would wonder, and I do wonder, because it seems like that's exactly what an invading group would do. Ryan says, I've looked everywhere. CBC has never dedicated a segment on Christianity. We live in a Christian country, yet they always do segments on Ramadan. I searched CBC Christian story, and the results are in the pick in my second post. All negative, right? So there's 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. School of Secrets, the church, the cult, and the consequences. He who casts stones, he who casts the first stone. No, I shouldn't quote the Bible. Surviving Greenville, a student story of abuse, silence, and speaking out. Where is God today? Christianity background and Christian movement that inside the fundamentalist Christian movement that wants to remake something or other. So they're not like us. They're fundamentalists, right? And here's your new Muslim neighbor. They're not fundamentalists. Don't ask questions you don't want to know the answer to. Samantha says, today it's Shrove Tuesday, one of the holiest days in the Christian calendar. Not that you'd be able to tell from the Church of England and Archbishop of Canterbury's social media pages because they're all about Ramadan. Crazy, right? Crazy town. Nobody's talking about anything to do with Christianity because I think that they've effectively killed it and turned it into a rainbow religion. And I'm not saying that you can't have a relationship with your God. I'm not saying that they've done anything to the entity that we worship through religion. But I think that the Christianity, and I've said this before, that people experienced in like 1900 compared to 2025. If I brought a 1900 person to 2025 to experience church right now, I think they'd walk out because they'd say, what the hell is this? I think that's my theory anyway. Brad says he's responding to this. He says a new border control investigation has revealed that since 2019, Canada's Refugee Hearing Board has been quietly accepting tens of thousands of asylum claims without ever asking the question, without ever actually questioning the migrants. It effectively rubber stamps applications from some of the most dangerous countries on earth: Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and Russia, Pakistan, and Iran. Iraq and Iran. Okay. Our immigration process goes through a paper-based process that is wide open to fraud. It even bypasses the security screening architecture designed to protect the nation. The report was published by the C.D. Howe Institute, accepting asylum claims without a hearing, a critique of IRB's file review policy. It was written by former Immigration and Refugee Board member James Youssef. It exposes what may be one of the most consequential and least understood vulnerabilities in Canada's immigration system. And here's a bigger report. This is on the Bureau. This is Sam Cooper's outlet, and it's a much more robust report, so it's just a bit beyond the scope of today, but link is in the description if you're interested. National Post reports the current 24-month backlog means that even an ineligible asylum claimant can expect at least 2 years of free Canadian health benefits before the claim is rejected. What? So they live here for 2 years and then they don't get health care after that? And then how is that a sustainable system? You've broken the law, come here, and your refugee claim is going to be rejected. Here's some healthcare. You're welcome. We'll see you in 2 years when this claim is run out. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Gadsad says, what is the evidence that you need to see to decide that a totalitarian death cult masquerading as a religion should be banned in the West? I'm only speaking hypothetically, of course. What more do you need to see to believe that a totalitarian communist group of people have taken over the leadership across the West and are invading us or flooding us, our countries, with foreigners on purpose? I've seen enough. I've seen the evidence that I need to see. It's all around me. CTV News says Ottawa faces calls to send essential fuel to Cuba as U.S. widens oil blockade. So the communist countries are all helping each other, and now Canada wants to send fuel to Cuba? Huh. Isn't that strange? Isn't that an odd thing to do? Isn't that an odd way to respond? Who's our friend and who's our enemy? Why are we trying to undermine the United States' ability to implement pressure on a communist regime that, sure, Canadians vacation to, but fundamentally, the communism is bad for a lot of people. The ability to vacation in Cuba was underpinned by Venezuelan black market oil run through Russia and China and Cuba, or run to Cuba by all these other communist places, China mainly. I don't know how much Russia has to do with it, but our acquiescence to this, our ability to benefit from this, that's not good. And we shouldn't be running to their rescue. We should be asking the United States, what can we do to help? How do we put more pressure on this group of people to finally get rid of this false and damaging ideology from your island, right? Like, wow, it's just wild. And nobody seems really interested in doing any of that, which is concerning. Retard Finder says, same week, two very different sentences. Makes no sense. A father who was 31 years old in Australia was jailed for 1 year for calling Jews, quote, the enemy in an Australia Day speech, and 3 months jail. So 1 year jail for words and 3 months jail for child sex offenses. A Melbourne primary school principal convicted of child sex offenses will spend just 3 months behind bars after a sentence that's left parents fuming. Border Force arrested the 50-year-old at the airport as he arrived home from the United States. So, yikes. And people, I thought that they'd have a hard time arresting people for speech, and I guess I'm wrong. I hope I'm not wrong about here. Let's talk about England a little bit because they're also being invaded, and we're already at 21 minutes. I should probably say goodbye to the stream. If you want the whole show, head over to Canada